Today I'm going to be taking a little detour away from my usual content of cartoon moms I would smash to do something a little bit different, something a little bit more highbrow. I'm going to be doing an iceberg chart. Yes, that's right, an iceberg chart. For those of you who are unfamiliar with an iceberg chart, it's set up around the concept that only 10% of an iceberg is visible, while the other 90% is underwater. So the top layer of this iceberg is things that everybody knows about, and then the bottom is more obscure stuff that most people haven't heard of. Now, I know I'm a little bit late to this trend, but let's face it, I'm late to everything. My mom was 14 months pregnant when I was finally born. I just found out about Game of Thrones 2 months ago. Can't wait to see how it ends. When other YouTubers make videos like these, they find the charts on Reddit and base them on that, but not me. I like to torture myself, so I made the whole iceberg chart myself, which means it'll probably be 80 to 90% wrong, so bear with me. Anyways, let's jump right into this thing, but before we do that, don't forget to like and subscribe or I'll throw you overboard. The first layer is the sky. We haven't even reached the iceberg yet. These are sitcoms that are universally known. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've heard of these shows. This is where you'll find your Friends, Modern Family, The Office, Big Bang Theory, Fresh Prince, Cheers, and my personal favorite, According to Jim. I'm not going to spend too much time on this layer because there's not much to say. We all know the Big Bang Theory was the most popular show in America despite nobody watching it. We all know how much I hate The Office, so why waste time? Let's get to the more interesting stuff. Layer number 2, we've arrived at the tip of the iceberg. Here you'll find shows that are well known but don't have as much mainstream appeal. This is where a lot of your genius level shows are going to be, like Community, Always Sunny, Curb Your Enthusiasm, you know. Things of that nature. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this section either, but I did want to take a second to shout out one of my personal favorite shows, Community, which I think is the most criminally underrated show of all time. When I say this show is comedic genius, I am not exaggerating. It's got every type of comedy you can think of. Slapstick, meta humor, puns, gags, goofs, gaffes. It's got a bit of a cult following now, but it was not appreciated while it was on the air. That combined with a ton of behind the scenes drama ensured that this show would not get the recognition it deserves. Like the last season of the show premiered on Yahoo Screen, a streaming service which is only known because it premiered the last season of Community. Anyways, the reason I'm bringing this up is just to say that if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. All seasons are on Netflix now. Okay, now we're venturing into shallow waters. Over here are shows that have huge cult followings but were canceled prematurely. I'm talking 1, 2, maybe 3 seasons. These shows were typically praised by critics and audiences and even won awards, but were taken off the air because of low viewership. This is where you got your Freaks and Geeks, Arrested Development, and Better Off Ted. I think Arrested Development is the most well-known of these shows. In fact, I think it's as known for being canceled too early as it is for being an excellent show. During its 3-season run, Arrested Development won 6 Emmys and a Golden Globe. You'll hear the phrase ahead of its time used a lot in reference to the show. I personally don't think it was ahead of its time at all. I think the wider television audience doesn't like to think when they're watching television. That's why shows like The Office are so popular, because anyone with 2 brain cells can understand the humor.
That's what she said!
Arrested Development had a bunch of meta jokes, reoccurring gags, and subtle references that were in the background that you won't notice on a first watch through. That's not everybody's cup of tea. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying a show needs to have intricate joke telling to be good. I love Fresh Prince and Friends as much as the next guy, and those shows aren't particularly deep. But you know, it's hard to get mainstream appeal when you go outside the formula. On top of having excellent writing, Arrested Development was also loved for its cast. From David Cross to Jason Bateman to Portia de Rossi, everybody in this show was so well casted. It's hard to get a combination of great writing and an incredible cast, man. Like, things like this come around once a generation, and they fucked it up. They canceled it too soon. Now, in 2013, they tried to bring back Arrested Development, but to be honest, the magic wasn't really there anymore. Like, it was still a decent show, but it's hard to take a 7-year break between seasons and still make a good show. But anyways, everybody knows about Arrested Development. Better Off Ted is a lesser known show starring, funnily enough, one of the stars of Arrested Development, Ellen DeGeneres' wife, Portia de Rossi, a fellow paisan. Better Off Ted is a workplace comedy about employees at a giant evil corporation called Viridian Dynamics.
Doing the right thing, it's important. What does it mean in business? We have no idea. Because we're a successful company. Viridian Dynamics.
The show follows the head of the research and development team at this company that creates pseudo-science fiction inventions like exploding pumpkin bombs, robots, cryogenic freezing, things of that nature. So yeah, it's essentially a satire of these unethical mega corporations that like dump chemicals into lakes and put arsenic in baby formula or some shit.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Me neither, Alex. Me neither. Better Off Ted had a unique concept, witty writing, and great characters. So naturally, it was canceled after 2 seasons. This is despite being well received by critics and audiences. It's a shame, man. I actually really like this show, but if you want to check it out, it's on Hulu. Now we're going deeper into the iceberg. Layer 4. These are shows that were canceled too soon, but didn't necessarily have a big cult following. Maybe a little cult following. Most people haven't heard of these shows. This is where you got your Man-Seeking Woman, Undeclared, and Selfie. The show in this area that stands out to me the most is Man-Seeking Woman, starring Jay Baruchel, I think that's how you say his name, and Eric Andre. This show had a very unique, like, avant-garde style, because at first it seems like just a regular sitcom about a guy getting dumped and then getting back into the dating scene. But no. It's not that at all. It doesn't take long for you to realize that there's monsters and aliens and robots and shit. It uses surrealism to get its point across, similar to Atlanta kind of, but even more out there. Like the very first episode was the main character going on a date with a literal troll. In any other show, this would just be the character fantasizing about how bad he thinks a date's gonna go, but no, it's an actual troll, like a Lord of the Rings troll, and it's amazing. And later on in the show, his ex-girlfriend starts dating Hitler. Not a guy who he thinks is Hitler because he hates him for dating his ex. No, the fucking Führer himself.
Josh Greenberg.
Greenberg?
Yes.
Uh-oh! There's a Jew at Hitler's party!
And then there's Undeclared, another show starring Jay Baruchel. Man, this guy really cannot get a break. So, a little bit of history. Judd Apatow made a show called Freaks and Geeks in 1999. You'll see it's in the third layer. It starred James Franco, Seth Rogen, Linda Cardellini, and Jason Segel. While the show only lasted 1 season, it won 3 Emmys, and it has a big cult following to this day. After Freaks and Geeks got canceled, Judd Apatow made Undeclared a year later. It's similar to Freaks and Geeks in the terms of its style and humor, but Undeclared was worse in almost every way. I mean, look at the comments on the pilot episode on YouTube. But it's still a very good show, and it still has a cult following, just not as big. The last show I'm going to talk about at this depth is called Selfie. Now, while I'm a fan of the other 2 shows, this one, not so much. It had decent reviews and even had a few articles written about how good it was, but one of them is from BuzzFeed, so take that with a gram of salt. It's about a young millennial woman who's obsessed with her social media presence, and she asks her boss, John Cho, who has his entire life together, to fix her after she realized social media is ruining her life. After watching the pilot of the show, it just seemed like a mouthpiece for boomers to say social media bad. The main character is a walking stereotype of young people, like she's ditzy, narcissistic, addicted to her phone, and overly sexual. Now, the pilot didn't really impress me, but people really seemed to enjoy this show, so I decided to give it another try and watch episode 2. The second episode was actually much better. The girl's acting like an actual human being and the writing improved dramatically. All in all, this show is not too bad. It's not really my cup of tea if I'm being honest, but I definitely see why a lot of people enjoyed it. If you want to check it out, you're kind of out of luck. It used to be on Hulu, but they took it off of there, so now the only place to watch it is like those sketchy streaming sites. Not saying that's where I watched it, but let's move on. The mythical 5th layer. This is where things start to get interesting. We're in the depths now. Here you have shows that have been largely forgotten, and usually for good reason. Sitcoms at this level are typically not very good. Like, the only reason people know about most of these shows is because they're bad. You got the original pilot for The Big Bang Theory, The Geico Caveman Show, That 80s Show, and Joey. Let's start with the original Big Bang Theory pilot. A lot of people don't know, but originally The Big Bang Theory was going to be much different. You can actually watch the pilot episode on YouTube in small chunks. Some key differences between the original pilot and the actual show was that Sheldon and Leonard had another geeky friend named Gilda instead of Raj and Howard. Also, there was no Penny. Instead, there was a character named Katie who was Leonard's love interest. She was cut from the show for being too mean to the main characters. Can you imagine how terrible it would be to be cut from what would go on to be the most popular show in America and watch your replacement make millions and millions of dollars just because some schmuck wrote your character as a bitch? The biggest difference was in Sheldon's character. He was much less, how do I say this, Reddity in this version. He was a bit more social and less robotic. Oh, and he fucked.
I feel you have a right to know that Sheldon and I have had sex.
Oh!
It was at a Star Trek convention. We were in costume, of course.
Honestly, I think this version of Sheldon was a lot more likable to me. I don't know why they changed him. Caveman, aka the Geico Caveman Show. This show is most known for being the most shameless, idiotic corporate cash grab in the history of television. Remember before streaming when we used to watch cable, and every 10 minutes we would be bombarded by these Geico Caveman commercials? Well, some genius on the marketing team at Geico had a few too many lines of coke and thought it was a good idea to make a television show out of these commercials. The shtick of the show is that there's 3 cavemen living in the modern world, and the original pilot for the show received very negative feedback because, I mean, it's a fucking 30-minute long ad for car insurance. You think people don't notice that? Also, people didn't like that the cavemen were essentially being used as stand-ins for minorities in the US.
The robbery was caught by this in-store security camera.
Great. Why do you have to be a caveman? Of course it's a caveman. They only put it on TV when it's a caveman. Is that supposed to be one of us? That thing looks like a hairy baby raisin.
So they made some changes after the pilot, and when they actually released the show, it was torn apart by everyone and their mothers, because of course it was. The Chicago Tribune put it in the top 25 worst TV shows ever, and you frequently find it on worst TV shows list on the internet. That 80s show, it's like that 70s show, minus the charm. Actually, other than the name, the series had nothing to do with that 70s show. It's a completely different cast, and most of the writers and staff from the original show weren't involved at all. The show stars Dennis Reynolds as Corey, and he's not very charismatic. As a matter of fact, none of the characters really are. I think I'm gonna blame the writing on this one. The only character that's really good in the show is his boss.
My breasts look like mushrooms.
A lot of the jokes fall really flat. Like 2 minutes into the show, they're already making cocaine jokes.
Hey, is my nose bleeding? Nah, you're good.
Get it? Because it's the 80s and everybody was doing coke back then. Pablo Escobar! You know, Narcos. But yeah, there's not much to say about this show other than it's just boring. I can see why it got canceled. It's incredibly boring. It doesn't really capture your attention. And it came way before the 80s nostalgia train. Joey. This is a spin-off of the show Friends centered around the character Joey Tribbiani, who is now living in Hollywood.
How you doing?
The only reason I ever saw this show is because for some weird reason it was really popular in Romania. So when I was over there visiting one summer, it was on all the time. Now, the appeal of the show Friends is the chemistry between all the characters. You get to see them all develop and grow together, and they were all different enough that you could get variation in the storytelling. You don't really get that with Joey, because it only focuses on Joey, and I don't really give a shit about any of the characters other than him. I barely care about him, which sucks, because, like, I need a break. I need a break from this character, man. He's good in Friends, because not all the screen time is dedicated to him. And I think Joey shines more as a comedic relief kind of side character, not as the main focus of the show. Also, he somehow got dumber, if you can believe that.
I got this new agent. This lady is a shark, and that means she's a good agent, not an actual shark.
Oh, and Adriana from The Sopranos plays his sister in the show, so that's cool.
Seen him? Huh?
Oh, and I know this wasn't on the chart, but I forgot to include it at the time. Another show that needs to be included in this category is Ancient Aliens. Wait, no, that's not right. Aliens in America. It's a sitcom centered around a kid who's an absolute schmuck. He's a loser, he's a nerd, nobody likes him. We're all familiar with this story, you know, some more than others. Anyways, this kid is such a massive loser that his guidance counselor and parents decide the only way for him to make friends is to ship one out from across the pond. That means England. But then they get really upset when it turns out they get a Pakistani kid instead. Like, look at the scene where they find out.
I am Raja, your exchange student.
Bro, what? What? Okay, so at first this might seem a bit racist, but if you watch the show, that was actually kind of the point. The point of the show is that people judge this kid for being different, when really he's just like us. Honestly, it's not as bad as I originally thought it was gonna be. I actually think the most offensive thing about this show is that it seems like the mom wants to bang her son.
Oh, Justin, if I was a girl your age.
Bruh.
Whoa. That was weird.
Let's move on, shall we? We go down deeper into the waters, and this section has shows that I'm pretty sure only me and a few other people know about. Like, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen any YouTube videos or articles or lists on the internet about any of these shows recently. Firstly, we got Mixology, a sitcom produced by Ryan Seacrest of all people, which premiered on ABC in 2013. This show is unique because the entire season took place over the course of one night. It shows the same events happening multiple times, but from different characters' points of view. This is a technique that's used a lot in movies, but you don't see it often in television shows. For the most part, the casting was really good. I especially liked Andrew Santino's character, Bruce. Now, the show received mixed reviews, but some people really hated it, especially this guy, Tim Goodman from The Hollywood Reporter. He said, "Mixology is a tone-deaf, poorly executed, badly written series that, in the parlance of the show, kind of rapes comedy." Whoa, those are some strong words, my guy. I think you need to relax. The only place you can watch it now is abc.com, so they might as well have just taken it off the internet altogether. All in all, I think this was a very underrated show, and the only people I know that have seen it are people that have seen it because I recommended it. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about Mixology. There's Johnny, a series that premiered on CISO, which is a streaming service that no longer exists, but was later acquired by Hulu. This one only got 7 episodes, which is sad because I like this one too. It takes place in the 70s and follows some schmuck kid who accidentally gets a job working behind the scenes on the Johnny Carson show. Now, the main character is kind of annoying and he's a bit of a Mary Sue, meaning he just gets lucky all the time and somehow is good at everything. But the rest of the cast is amazing. Tony Danza's in it, man. It's got kind of a Forrest Gump thing going on because they play actual clips from the Johnny Carson show and build the plot around those clips, which I think is really cool. Method and Red. Hey, remember the rappers Method Man and Redman? Remember how they did that movie How High? Well, after that movie's success, they used the same fish out of water concept of these two dudes from the ghetto living amongst rich white people and made it into a whole show. Now, this show, in my opinion, was not very good, but I've only watched the first episode. The reviews weren't terrible, but Method Man agrees with me that it wasn't very good. He was extremely disappointed with how the show turned out. He wanted a show in the same style as Arrested Development, but instead he got a generic laugh track sitcom with like really bad editing.
We moved here because we was on the bubble.
This one's kind of sad because it had potential to be good if only they had followed Method Man and Redman's vision. Layer 7. We have now arrived at the bottom of the iceberg. We are in the deep, dark depths. There's nothing down here but darkness and that one weird fish from Finding Nemo with the light coming out of its head. At this level, you'll find only the most legendary of shows. Shows that were so bad or so offensive that they were canceled after one episode. Also, it's very hard to find most of these shows on the internet. Let's begin with a show by the name of Emily's Reasons Why Not. Emily's Reasons Why Not was a 2006 comedy starring Heather Graham, who was super popular at the time. It was about a self-help guru who had trouble with her own love life. This is real original shit here, guys. ABC spent a butt ton of money advertising this show only to have it crash and burn after only one episode. They didn't even give this one a chance. ABC pulled it after airing literally one episode, but while only one episode aired, they actually filmed the entire season of the show, and you can buy it on DVD, but that's the only way you can see this show. There's only a small clip on YouTube, and everything else was pretty much scrubbed off. And if you really want to see it, the DVDs cost upwards of $70, so I don't know if it's worth it. If you're a diehard Dantavius fan, you already know about How Honey I'm Home, because I made a whole video about it. If you haven't seen it, pause this video right now and go watch it, you schmuck. In short, How Honey I'm Home is a British-made parody of old American sitcoms, with a twist. The main character is Adolf Hitler, former Führer of the Third Reich. If you know your history, you know that this guy was a real jerk.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
But yeah, if you want to know more about this show, just go watch my video on it. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Co-Ed Fever, a 1979 sitcom inspired by the film Animal House, which came out a year earlier. This one was actually the third frat house-based show that came out in 1979, the first of which was Delta Force, which was actually adapted from Animal House, the second being Brothers and Sisters. Both were canceled after one season because people realized that frats are fucking dumb. Not a lot of shows from this time period are good for our modern tastes, but even for back then, this show was dog shit. Like, it was incredibly bland. It's a show about a frat house. How do you make that boring? I mean, full disclosure, I've only seen about 2 minutes of the show because that's all that's available online, so I might be a bit hasty with that categorization, but I mean, come on, bro. Fucking just trust me. What are you gonna do? Watch it yourself? No, because you can't. because there's only 2 minutes available online, so shut up. Our last show. This one isn't a sitcom, it's actually a sketch show, but I wanted to include it because I thought it was interesting. Dot comedy is one I actually never heard of until I started doing research for this video. There's not a lot of information out there about this show. I couldn't even find a full episode anywhere. I spent hours trying to find as much as I could about this show, but there really isn't much. The most I could find is this 3-minute clip on YouTube from a sketch they did. Another YouTuber by the name L Supersonic Q was able to get some more clips of it. I don't know how, because I haven't been able to find any, so he must have got them before they got scrubbed. This is some truly obscure media. All I could gather is that it was a show that came out in 2000, which made fun of things on the internet. It was kind of like an early version of Tosh.0, but less edgy. It was hosted by comedian duo the Sklar Brothers, and it did so poorly in the ratings that it was canceled after 1 episode. So I actually found another clip from the show after I already recorded this audio. It's another 3-minute long clip, and it only has 961 views on YouTube, which is why it was so freaking hard to find. Now you guys may be asking, was the show really that bad? No, probably not, but it was a show about the internet in the year 2000. Nobody even knew what the internet was at that time. It really was ahead of its time. I don't know what they were thinking making this show, but hey, it could have worked. Who knows? Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this isn't my typical content of tier lists, but this is the type of stuff that I would like to do more of moving forward, like video essays and commentary and things of that nature. I really enjoy it. I still enjoy the tier list because that's like more unscripted. That's more me. But, you know, I like putting a lot of effort in videos and doing research and stuff like that. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I will be making more of this stuff. So I really hope people actually watch these. Other than that, you know, thank you guys again, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're not already.